still, there we go. So even though we're virtual, we still like to acknowledge that the ground that's beneath all of our feet is historically the home of Indigenous peoples, many of who have been forced to leave for other lands. So please feel free to share the names of the people who have inhabited the land before you and where you are, and just drop it in the chat. So as I mentioned before, I run the Student Ambassador Program along with Christina and Catherine Grievers. So I'll put all of our information in the chat just for anyone that's interested in learning more about the program, or anyone who's looking to join us when we start up our cycle in September. So we are really excited to introduce this next installment of our Fashion Revolution USA career panel. And the education team wanted to create this program for students and community members to kind of bridge the connection between advocacy groups and diverse decision makers across the fashion industry. If you're ever interested in becoming a Fashion Revolution ambassador, I'll also put a Google form down in the chat, and all of our information, so you can email us, ask any questions. So now I'm going to hand it off to Hannah to kind of kick off and introduce our speaker.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I was a Fashion Revolution student ambassador this year. I just graduated from Marymount Manhattan College in New York, where I studied fashion marketing and digital journalism. And yeah, and I did this program, which is very cool. And today I'm talking to Tina Lutz, who has a long history in fashion design and sustainability, and she's going to talk to us about the production practices of her own brand. So thank you, Tina. We're having connection issues.
Oh, Tina, I don't think we can hear you. Could you just say something?
Okay, wait.
Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Now continue.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, all right.
So Hannah, I guess you can go on and you can start asking the first questions then.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just get right into it. We know that you worked at Calvin Klein in a very defining time in the early 90s. So first, just what was that like?
Yeah, so the time when I was working at Calvin Klein was the time when he had just discovered Kate Moss. And at the beginning, she was our fit model, and later his muse. It was the time of Kate Moss and Marky Mark, and it was the launch of CK, of the underwear line, of denim. Collection was designed by Narciso Rodriguez. In PR was Caroline Bessette, who then later married John F. Kennedy Jr. It was Calvin was very involved. I reported to him, so it was very. It was like a small family, and as the company grew, that changed pretty quickly at the end of the 90s, when like CEOs came in, and the company got bigger and split up in the different segmentations. But it was a fun time. I had never lived in New York before. I moved to New York from Paris, and so it was I wasn't completely new to the States. I had lived in San Francisco for 1 year, but it was my first time in New York. And when I came, I was so overwhelmed. I was like, oh my God, I'm staying here for 2 years and in the city. And I ended up staying 24. I obviously fell in love with New York.
And you mentioned that you started out in Paris. I know you were at ICA Miyake. What was that like versus Calvin Klein? Because I know they must have been very different.
Yeah, it could not have been more different. So I started after school. My first job was to work for Issey Miyake in the Paris office. And I was kind of working on a lot of different things because it was a huge office, but we were only like 7 people because 4 times a year the Japanese team would come from Tokyo and organize the shows that were huge at the time. I mean, there were like huge tents with like thousands of people, and all the preparation was done in our office, the casting, the styling, everything. And some production was made in Italy. So I was kind of working on everything. It was like the best school ever because I could work behind the scene, how to organize a fashion show, how to do the seating for a show. But then I also had to go to Italy and work with factories and select fabrics and communicate with the design team in Tokyo. And after my time after I've been in Paris working for Issey for almost 3 years, they asked me to come to Tokyo. And so I got to work with the design team in Tokyo. So it could not have been more different from Calvin Klein because at Issey, we did not look at fashion. We did not look at what other designers were doing. It was really about getting inspired by anything but fashion. So I remember that one day he gave me a flower book by Irving Penn and said, please design a collection of dresses based on these flowers. And it wasn't Calvin, Issey was not about does it fit, is it easy to wear. It was really more like making sculptures. Especially we worked a lot with pleats, so we were making like flower petals, huge flower petals out of pleats, and attach them to the dresses with grommets. And it was really more like like making sculptures. At Calvin was very different because it's a commercial business. So there we had to exactly know what everybody else was doing on the market. We would, go through fashion magazines and, we would have to stay on trend or create trends or push trends. Yeah. So it was basically artistry versus commercialism.
Yeah. Interesting. So in your career, I know you were also a creative and branding director later. What led you to start implementing socially, environmentally conscious business practices?
I think growing up in Germany in the 70s, we already were taught in school to recycle, to take care of nature, to try not to use too much plastic. And so I feel like it was really ingrained in me. And I remember moving to New York and there was no recycling. And I literally couldn't get myself to throw a glass bottle into the common trash. Eventually I had to, because there was no recycling in New York. It came many, 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 many years after I moved there. I would almost say 15 years until, New York started to recycle. So for me, it was kind of ingrained from my childhood. So even when I started my company, Lutz and Patmos, in 99, and we launched in 2000, it was clear from the beginning that, this belief in recycling and producing with as little wastage as possible, making sure, to work with artisans, supporting them, support their craft. That was, a given that had to be part of this brand.
Dobro. Evo.
Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, actually, I have a quick question. I know that you talked about the difference between working for Issey Miyake and for Calvin Klein. Like, if you're working for, a brand like Calvin Klein, how do you find, or like you said, like a more commercial brand, how do you kind of find that medium between like being very creative? Like, what if you're someone very creative having to do that kind of work? How do you incorporate that into what you're doing?
I mean, when you work for a big corporation, it's a good question because it's difficult, right? Because what happens is that, even when you're in charge of part of the collection and, you really get into your concept and, you really, every single thing that you design makes sense. It's like a domino effect, right? It's like one leads to the next. And then you present it, to a superior and then to superior. And by the time you get to Kelvin, there's so many people who, gave their input. And you basically, unfortunately, have to learn to be flexible and be a team player. And, you have to make concessions. And, many times, by the time I finally got to present to Kelvin, it wasn't what I wanted it to be, but you definitely get stifled in your creativity when you work for a big commercial company. The interesting thing was, though, that very many times he immediately came to the weak point. You kind of feel it in your belly where you're like, okay, this is where it lost its essence. And, now the pieces don't really click together anymore. And most of the time he immediately realized it. And, many times I was able to go back to my original designs, which was great. It was a great confirmation. Yeah. But it is especially in America because it's very much about numbers and key items and stores and bestsellers. And, you have to work really closely with merchants because they are the ones who are going to give you your design plan, and you have to design into that plan. And most of the time it's 30% repeat styles, 30% new versions of bestsellers, and 30% you can kind of create new stuff and, try and, bring novelty to the collection. But that's just 30%.
So how did your experiences before you started Lutz Morris, how did that shape the core values that you have behind the brand and how you implement them? Because I know they're an integral part of Lutz Morris.
Yeah. I always feel like collecting as many experiences as possible before you start your own brand is really important. And I also feel that having great experiences is great, but I have to say I learn the most from negative experiences. I feel like they have formed me through my career the most, because the things that I saw at the different companies that I worked that I didn't like, I knew that starting up my own company, I wanted to avoid them. And that was to be wasteful. That was, to just work, with kind people, to, have a work-life balance, to, like I said, work with artisans. And, I've spent a lot of time in China, by the time I started my first own business. And I've just seen things, in factories that I knew I definitely never ever want to produce there. And I wanted also, it was also this throwaway society where, you had to create new collections all the time. Like there's something new had to be shipped every month. And, I just wanted to slow everything down and make things that, first of all, are more timeless. So they are not connected per se to like a fad, like a quick trend that comes and goes. But I also wanted to create things in a quality, that allows you to keep it in your, to keep it and wear it for years, it wouldn't fall apart. It's kind of like buy less, buy better. Does it cost more money? Yes, but in the long run, when you add it all up, it probably is the same expense.
Mm-hmm. And
adding up, I mean, throwaway fashion, like adding up, the pieces that you just buy for a season and then they fall apart or, disintegrate in the wash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You say you don't believe in the term sustainability. Why is that?
Because I feel the moment you produce something or make something, it's not sustainable. Because in the end, I mean, it sounds really harsh, but in the end, you know, everything we make eventually will land in a landfill. And so I feel that the word sustainability has been so misused and has been used for greenwashing that, you know, I just recently read an article that said that actually sustainability has become a really bad word because it doesn't mean anything anymore. I prefer the word responsible. I feel that you just need to be as responsible as possible, and you need to do very thorough research constantly. You can't just stop because things keep, you know, evolving and improving all the time, and that you have to be you have to, every single step along the production line and along the design process, you just have to ask yourself, could I do this better? Is there a better solution that harms the environment less? But it's still not sustainable because you're still producing.
Right. At Lutz Morris and your production practices, how do you implement slow fashion as not just being the opposite of fast fashion? What is your production like?
So at Lutz Morris, I finally arrived where I wanted to be because I was really able to combine all my experience and put it in this one project. So Lutz Morris is a line of responsibly made leather accessories made in Germany by artisans, and everything is sourced very closely to the factory. The leather is tanned in Germany under super strict environmental regulations. They have their own water treatment plant. I'll get to this later, but so it is as responsible as possible right now. And wait, let me get back to your question. I lost my train of thought. Remind me again.
Yeah, I just wanted to know more about what your production is like. I know you want to be
the slow production, exactly, the slow fashion. Yes. So you know how you call a restaurant, or a restaurant calls when they just source local produce, it's called slow food. So it's a restaurant that doesn't ship oranges in from far away or avocados. They really literally just work with the farmers that are very close by to the restaurant. So that's called slow food. So slow fashion is basically the equivalent. So you don't fly things in from faraway places. You literally just look in a very close circle to your production site, and you just source there. And sometimes it's limiting because you're like, yeah, but you know, over in Japan, they have it and it's so much better. But you're like, no, can't have it. It's too far away, needs to get on a plane. Not, you know, it's not responsible. So have to find something that's closer to our artisans.
Yeah, that's a component that often gets left out. I feel like I think about how I rent clothes, but then there's also like they were shipped. I have to drive to the post office to send it back. So
and they have to get dry cleaned.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was just thinking of that. So you have to consider all the factors, not just like what it's made of.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions on anything about what we just talked about?
Hi, I have a question. Thank you so much. This is really interesting. I'm appreciating it. Do you have recommendations for publications or resources that maybe you use to stay up to date on what are the most responsible behaviors in the industry?
There It's a good question because there's so much happening, right? It's almost like a full-time job to stay on top of all the development. Where I get my best resources from, there's a Vogue UK sustainability newsletter that comes out every day. It used to be free until recently, and now you have to pay. It's a minimal fee, I think, for students. Or you have to check, maybe it's still free for students. So I found that really helpful. I feel that's really good. And then there's also the Business of Fashion newsletter every day. They also have good sustainability news. So I get most of my news really from newsletters that I subscribe to. If I can think of something else, I'll let you know. I'll let Kathleen know, and she can, communicate it to you, because I know there are 2 or 3 other ones, but those are really my key sources. Mm.
Hi, thank you very much for the chat. I had a question, and this might be coming up in the interview. Just wanted to hear more about your company and how you started your company and what you do. I know you mentioned it's leather accessories, but yeah, if we can talk about that. Thank you.
Okay. Hannah, do you want me to answer the question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my first company that I launched in New York was a line of, it started with knitwear, high-end knitwear. It was cashmere sweaters first. It sounds a bit crazy to you probably, but back then there were no cool cashmere sweaters. Like, cashmere sweaters were more for like older people, and they were all like, I don't know, for heavyset men or women. I don't know, it was just very strange. And so we felt like we wanted to make cashmere sweaters that were slimmer fitting, in cool colors. And we did something super revolutionary. Hold on to that one. We made a hoodie out of cashmere. And that was kind of like, oh my God, like, I don't know, that propelled us, quite quickly onto all the Barneys, into all the big department stores. It was a success story for sure, our line. And we later added out ready to wear. We also added a secondary line that was called Leroy and Perry, that was using wool and cotton and less luxurious materials. And we did that for 11 years. And then my business partner and I decided to split. It was like a marriage running its course. And so when I stayed in New York for like 5 more years and consulted for different companies and was getting more and more into sustainability. Also started teaching at RISD with Kathleen. And in 2015, we moved to Berlin, which was supposed to just be a 1-year stay, which is now 6 years. We're still here. And it was a complete coincidence that I got introduced to these leather artisans and in Germany who were really struggling to survive. And I met amazing family businesses, 3 generations, beautiful work, completely comparable in quality with Italy or France. And I was so taken by it that I suddenly started having all these ideas for leather accessories. Now, in my career, I oversaw big design teams and I had accessory designers under me. So I would give them direction, but I never designed accessories myself from the scratch up. And so I spent a year researching. I researched everything about leather, everything about hardware, about plating, about environmental harm. And I made a few protos, took them to New York and showed them to all my friends back there. There were buyers, there was press, there were just friends. And I was like, is this a crazy idea? I really didn't want to start another company. And everybody was so encouraging. So I launched in 2017. And I've been enjoying it so much because it really is not about, it's really about the people. It's really about the people that touches this business. So it's about the artisan. It's about creating hope for young people to go into this profession. We've been really successful with this because a lot of the young people didn't want to learn this trade because there's no hope. We support a charity that a friend of mine started in the States. It's called Every Mother Counts, which prevents maternal mortality worldwide, especially in the States where, especially under Trump, the States slipped to spot 36 in the world for maternal mortality, which is worse than some developing countries. It's a charity that does incredibly good things. And so we donate $10 of every bag sold to this charity, which some people are like, but $10, that's not so much. But if you really like strip it all down, for some bags, that's 10% of the proceeds of the bag. And we chose a flat amount because so many companies are so shifty about their donation. They're like 1% of the proceeds, but what are the proceeds? If the proceeds are zero, then the donation is zero. Or, you know, if the proceeds are $10, then, you know, it's $1. You just, you know, we just wanted to communicate it very clearly that it's $1. And so what I really liked about starting up Lutz Morris was that I could take all my negative experiences and all the things that I've learned throughout my career and apply them to this new adventure. And because what I've done before, like, you know, working in wovens and knits, like I would go to Première Vision, to the fabric show in Paris, like twice a year. I would go to Pitti Filati in Florence for the yarn twice a year. I could do it with my eyes closed. And this was a really nice new challenge because I literally had to start. I had to start from the bottom up. I could ask so many whys. I'm like, why do you do this like this? Why do you tan leather like this? Why is, you know, why leather? Why pleather? You know, like it was really nice to challenge myself and do something out of my comfort zone.
I also have a question. I know you mentioned that, you know, you were at RISD with Kathleen, and just kind of like looking back at the time where you were there, do you think that there are changes in the curriculum that you'd like to see to help those young designers kind of get careers that align with them?
So the last time I taught at RISD is over 6 years ago. So I hope they made changes to the curriculum. I can only talk to the curriculum back then, but I hope that it, you know, that there's more sustainability implemented in the program. I also hope that it is more real life connected. I felt like there was a bit of a disconnect between, you know, what the industry is really about and what the students got to learn. Because in the end, you know, the industry, you know, depending on where you work, can be very commercial. And at RISD, you know, like the creativity was really pushed. But I think quite a few students, and I'm still in touch with some of them, were quite disappointed when they started working that you know, like you asked before, like, you know, that you couldn't be as that they couldn't be as creative as they wanted to be. But overall, I thought it was still a really good program. Mm-hmm.
While we're on that topic, for people like me who are on the job hunt and want to do good in fashion, what would you recommend to get started?
You know, a lot has changed since I left the States. I know, you know, I'm very involved in the CFDA, and I know that the CFDA has really great student programs where they support students, where they give them platforms, where they, you know, where you where they show portfolios of the students. They even do like job connections with, you know, members of the CFDA who are looking for entry level jobs. So I feel like the CFDA is a really good place to start. Their website is really well done. So I feel, I mean, you know, either you can share links with everyone later, or, you know, everybody can just go to it's the Council of Fashion Design of America, CFDA. You can go to the cfda.com website and see what you can find there. But I know that Sarah Kozlowski, she is in charge of all the student mentoring programs.
Let's see, I have a couple industry related questions for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know your brand is not about following trends and about buying less and buying better. So in the era of the $5 t-shirt, what can we do to ensure customers' willingness to invest in ethical and sustainable or responsible product is not exploited by greenwashing and vague terms?
It's hard, no, because, you know, fashion is the one area where there is no rating system. You know, like washing machines get rated for their, you know, electrical use. Buildings get rated, LEED certified, how energy efficient they are. But in fashion, there is no rating system. So it's incredibly confusing. Like an organic t-shirt dyed regularly versus a regular cotton t-shirt dyed with plant dye. You know, it would be so helpful to have a rating system so you know which one, you know, is better for the environment. But I think you have to ask a lot of whys. I mean, a $5 t-shirt is quite obvious. That's not good, because we all kind of know how much a yard of, you know, cotton jersey costs. And then, you know, you're like, okay, what is really left under the bottom line? Because that t-shirt isn't, you know, usually comes from Asia. It gets shipped, so there's, you know, quite a bit of shipping money in there. There is, I mean, in the end, if they're like 30 cents for labor in there, that's a lot. So you know that a $5 t-shirt is bad news. That can be anything good. I feel like you have to be really critical, because I constantly get across websites that claim to be sustainable or green, but then when you really read through their messaging, you're like, that is complete greenwashing. It makes no sense at all. And, you know, there are some companies that are really transparent and really honest. I feel that's what's really missing right now. The companies that are greenwashing, they're just trying to fool everyone. But what's really missing in our business is honesty. And, you know, I always say, I try my best. It's some areas still need improvement, and we're working on that all the time. I am not claiming we're 100% perfect, because that's not possible. It's work in progress. But I feel like honesty is something that is missing from the communication in sustainability. There's actually a very expensive line, but maybe it's inspiring. I feel like that is the only brand that I know that should use the word sustainability, because so much research goes into everything they do. And it's called Another Tomorrow. And I can't afford the clothes. They're beautiful. I know the designer. I know the woman who started this line, and we're talking right now about collaborating on a bag. But when you go in the back end, where they talk about all the materials that they use and why they use them, but they also have a list of why they don't use certain other materials. It is super well researched, and they have a team, of people that just do that. Yes, so you have to just be very, critical thinking is required when you try and shop for sustainable or responsible clothing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky how it's on the consumer to do the research, but that can definitely get better if brands are just completely honest and there's no questioning involved in the consumer.
But I really believe that fashion needs a rating system. I really, there's the Higgs index, but it's not free. It's not available for everyone. They have it in the leather industry. There's the leather working group who has very, very strict guidelines for tanning. And, like the gold medal is to be gold certified, and then there's silver and bronze. And when you get gold certified as a tannery, you cannot stop working on improving. They're sneaky, they come unannounced, they check your tannery, they constantly, you have to keep working at getting better and better to keep, the rating that you got. And so I feel like that's really what's needed for the fashion world.
Burberry and Reformation actually just announced climate positive goals by 2040 and 2025. And some experts are saying this is not very achievable. Do you think it is? Do you think this is going to be future of responsible fashion while other brands come out with these huge goals?
So say the beginning again. Who came out with, who said that?
Burberry and Reformation that I've seen recently.
And they said that they will be?
They're going to be climate positive. Burberry said 2040 and Reformation said by 2025.
Okay. I mean, those are big words. I mean, it's hard to, talk to their numbers, because, like there's so many different angles to look at things. I mean, I'm still wary of these companies who have these huge fashion shows where they, fly models around the world and have these crazy set built, and then, I don't know, they all land in the trash. It's, it's hard to know what they put into that climate positive pot, right? Is it the whole company, or is it really just the clothing part, the production? Because sampling is super wasteful too. So I haven't read really more about it, so it's hard for me to, make an educated comment on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's new. So I guess we'll see how these industry goals turn out, because they've set themselves up really high. So
yeah.
Follow. But yeah, it's interesting what you say about like the fashion shows, because they're a huge production for something that lasts maybe 20 minutes, but then there's the benefit of the return that you get from the marketing and the press. So it goes back to
social media.
It's all about the image and being very commercial. So yeah, it's always balanced. Like how can you do both? How can you be successful and market and follow trends, but also be responsible?
Yeah. But you know, there's no police, like there's no police who ask the Dior's and the LVMHs, like, okay, you know, like those numbers that you spit out, you know, what is it really, right? Because these numbers are all done internally, and you know, it needs to sound good for the press, and it needs to, yeah, it's, I don't know, I don't want to judge, but I have a hard time, you know, I feel like there needs to be a neutral audit from outside companies to believe those numbers. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm.
Does anyone have any questions? Anything else they've seen that they want to talk about? That's what I had for like recent
Okay.
news industry that I wanted to talk about.
There was maybe one more thing I just wanted to address real quickly. In my research, I was researching leather alternatives versus using real leather. And it was, you know, it was quite frustrating because, you know, like some brilliant marketing person created this term vegan leather. But what vegan leather really was it's plastic. It's made with crude oil. It doesn't disintegrate. Does it protect animals? It does, but it is a very harmful alternative to leather. So having done all this research and working with specialists, you know, we had to come to this conclusion that right now, this moment, it is still more responsible to use the leather that we're using. We're tanning in Germany, and all the skins come either from Germany or from Holland. The tanner is really close to the Dutch border, so it's all byproduct from the dairy industry. So the skins are not being shipped from India or from far away. It is, you know, they call it naturally expired animals. And so the vegan leather being plastic is, you know, somebody said, it's like you call your shower curtain vegan leather. That's exactly the same thing.
Mm.
So now there has been development with some natural materials, but they still need to get bonded with plastic, with oil components, and they are not very durable. There is one company that I'm working with right now in the States. We're developing a few leathers that I'm, you know, real vegan leathers. We really like, they're all made, it's 100% vegetables. And it's really exciting. We're getting closer and closer to making it feel more like leather. But like for certain products, it's still not usable because it won't wear very well on corners of bags, you know, because one big thing of Lutz Morris is also that we want to make bags that last for generations, not just for a season. And that's why we offer refurbishing and repair, because sometimes accidents happen and we don't want the bag to just go in the trash. We rather repair it. And so, you know, because a lot of people are like, how can you say you're responsible when you use leather and not vegan leather? So that was just my little, you know, 10 cents to that subject.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
bringing that up. I know fashion has an ongoing leather debate, and I remember in my first job at a handbag boutique, they told me to say vegan in reference to the fake bags. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question. Do you have any idea of any like internships or like early career opportunities for people?
You know, I wish I would, but being in Berlin for the last 6 years, I don't. I'm sorry. I'm a bit out of the loop. Sorry. I mean, I still have lots of friends who have fashion companies in New York. but I don't know what, what their needs are. And everybody has been really hurting after COVID, right? It has been really tough for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited that fashion is coming back to New York in September, like the shows and the Met Gala.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice. Yeah.
All right. So Hannah, is that all the questions that you have?
Yeah, I'm good. If anyone else has any other questions.
All right, cool. Well, if not, thank you so much, Tina. This was such an amazing conversation. And I put your information for your brand and stuff. I put that in the chat so people can know. And then again, I put the information for our ambassador program and stuff like that. We're revamping it so you don't have to be a student anymore to join our ambassador program. So feel free to, shoot me an email. Again, I put it in the chat. But yeah, thank you so much, Hannah, for interviewing Tina. You were so wonderful. So yeah, thank you everyone so much for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Sorry, it's like
Awesome.
I removed them from the meeting because I think they probably got up or something.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I think I went well. I think it was a little awkward at some points, but
Yeah.
I think it was fine. I think we got a really nice turnout. That was great.
Same. I was happy with the turnout.
Yeah.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, I didn't know why Amy Bird was there. She's one of the directors at Brown University. And I'm going, wait a minute, what is she doing here? Like, what?
Oh,
She
no
was at
way.
another one. I think she was there last week too.
He was at the 1,000 Belt one too.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm literally speaking to another tomorrow on Thursday. So I have to tell Tina. That's so funny.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I would absolutely let her know what you're doing because she could.
Oh, also if they end up collaborating and actually doing a line together, then we could all talk. That'd be very cool. And also another tomorrow, it's a very expensive brand, don't get me wrong, but I was expecting it to be like Stella McCartney prices, and it's not.
No, it looks like I looked it up. It's like, well, what?
It's expensive.
$190. It's not too bad.
Yeah, but it's helpful to know that like they are a B Corp and really like sustainable to their core. Because that's the kind of thing that like you lean into in an activation, right? It's like, sorry, I'm just thinking, but no, it's a great brand.
Yeah, no, I agree. Oh, cool.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. And so we'll see each other tomorrow night, is it?
Yes.
Tomorrow night. Awesome.
Great.
All right. See you then.
Awesome. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Bye.